Mama, I will never allow any man to control me. Rather, I'll be the one controlling him, Adaugo declared. Keep quiet, Adaugo, her mother retorted. It is your duty to be submissive to your husband, not the other way around, she said. Let's wait and see. Until I'm married, then you'll understand, Adaugo replied to her mother. Adaugo was the only child of her mother, Ijoma, and the first child of her father, Okafor. 4 years after Adaugo was born, Okafor married a second wife, Ujunwa, because Adaugo's mother failed to conceive and bear him another child. Okafor, like every Igbo man, wanted many children, especially male children, who would continue his legacy even though he had nothing tangible to his name, except the house which they lived in and the one plot of land he used in farming, both of which he inherited from his late father as the first son. Ujunwa managed to give him 3 children, 2 girls and a boy, but Okafor wasn't satisfied. He married a third wife who bore him a daughter and a son. Adaugo never liked her father. She saw him as a lazy, entitled and a mean man who cared about no one else but himself. While other men were going out of their way to provide for their family, Okafor was content with the little yield his small farm was producing. He would go to the farm in the morning and rush back home in the midday complaining, "The sun is too hot for my delicate skin. I did not come to this world to suffer. Thank God I have children who will take care of me at old age." Whenever Adaugo heard her father say those words, she was always pissed. While other men are returning from their farms after sunset, Okafor and his best friend Udochie would be seen under the baobab tree drinking palm wine and playing draft happily. His wives were the ones doing all the heavy lifting in the house. They would go to the farm from morning till dusk, go to the market, fetch firewood, cook, clean, and still perform their wifely duties at night. Of course, the children helped in the best way they could, while their father was preoccupied with living the good life. One fateful day, Adaugo asked her father, "Papa, why do you have only one farmland and one house? Why don't you plan on having more properties to your name?" Her father looked at her angrily and said, "What do you mean? Is having one farmland and one house not enough for me? What else do I need another farmland and house for?" Adaugo looked at her father in surprise as if to say, "What is this foolish man saying?" But she couldn't find the words to voice out her thoughts. Her father continued, "Have you heard that anyone in this village had died and carried all the properties they acquired to the grave with him?" Adaugo answered, "No, Papa, but it is often said that a wise man leaves an inheritance for his children." Okafor looked at his daughter with scorn, then said, "Adaugo, are you saying I am a foolish man? Because I don't understand what you are up to with this discussion." Adaugo quickly interjected, "Papa, that's not what I'm saying, no. All I'm saying is that it would be nice for you to have other properties to your name in your lifetime besides the farmland and this house you inherited from your father." Okafor was furious. He could not believe Adaugo had the effrontery to say such things to him. Before Adaugo could say one more word, her father landed a heavy slap on her face, which threw her off the stool she was sitting on to the ground. Okafor marched straight to Ijoma's hut. "Ijoma! Ijoma! Where are you? Come out here at once!" he roared. Ijoma was confused. She quickly ran outside. "My husband, what is the matter? Hope all is well," she asked, panicking. "All is not well. In fact, all will never be well until this your useless daughter leaves my house today." At this point, Ijoma's confusion heightened. "My husband, what has Adaugo done this time around?" she asked, her voice shaking. "So you sent your useless, shameless and good-for-nothing daughter to come and insult me this early morning, isn't it?" "Ah, Adaugo has killed me, oh!" her mother exclaimed, running towards Adaugo where she was, sitting on the floor crying. Without asking any question, Ijeoma started beating Adaugo with a stick she picked from the floor. Adaugo was shocked by her mother's reaction. She tried to explain to her mother what happened, but she wouldn't have it. She kept on hitting her with the stick. Left with no other choice, Adaugo ran away to avoid further beating. Okafor gave everyone strict warning not to allow Adaugo back in the compound, otherwise he would skin her alive. So, that evening, Uloma, one of her younger sisters who knew where Adaugo would be, took some food to her and told her everything her father said. Adaugo wasn't at all surprised hearing what her father said. She had always known him to be a very self-centered, proud and egocentric man. But what surprised her was the fact that her mother didn't bother to come look for her. Well, Ijeoma was concerned about Adaugo's whereabouts, but Okafor had given her stern warning. If you dare step out of this compound in search of that your good-for-nothing daughter, both of you better not come back here ever again. Of course, Ijeoma knew too well not to disobey her husband, so she went to bed that night worried sick about her daughter's safety. The next morning, Ijeoma called her husband's brothers and some elders to come and beg her husband to forgive their daughter and let her back into the compound. After Okafor narrated his part of the story to them, all the men agreed that Okafor was right to have chased Adaugo out of the house. How dare she challenge her father? Didn't she know that the kitchen is the only place for a woman in the house? One of the elders roared. I wonder. Another elder replied, since when do women start having a say on how a grown man decides to live his life in this village? Okafor's younger brother, Anozie, stood up and said to Ijeoma, now that your daughter has placed a curse on herself by pouring insult on her father, there's only one thing she can do to be forgiven. Ijeoma knelt down crying, my husbands, please, tell me whatever you need Adaugo to do. I'll make sure she does it straight away. Anozie continued, she'll have to make a delicious porcupine soup for her father, so he could lay his hands on her, pray for her, and lift the curse. But she must hunt for the porcupine all by herself. The task seemed very onerous, but Ijeoma, wanting to foster peace between her daughter and her father, assured the men that Adaugo would do as requested. When her mother told her the conditions her uncles and the elders had given in order for her to return to her father's house in peace, Adaugo laughed sarcastically. Mama, I have done nothing wrong. I only told Papa the obvious truth, and I won't apologize for speaking up. If he doesn't want me back in his house, then so be it, Adaugo said firmly. Her mother tried everything she could to persuade her to come back home, apologize to her father, and live her life peacefully like everyone else, but Adaugo refused. Instead, she told her mother, Mama, don't bother yourself. There's nothing you or anyone else will do to make me change my mind. I am tired of the way Papa treats you and his other wives. If I come back home, we'll keep having similar issues. It's better I go far away from him before I'll do what we'll all regret. Her mother washed in tears as Adaugo walked away. But she consoled herself saying, it's just a matter of days. She'll change her mind and come back home. Adaugo never came back. She went to another quarter of the village to live with her auntie Ego, whom herself was as stubborn and assertive as Adaugo. Adaugo told Auntie Ego everything that happened, including how her uncles and the elders asked her to apologize to her father for stating the obvious. Auntie Ego was even more furious because she had always detested Okafor's laziness. She promised Adaugo that she could stay with her for as long as she wanted. That night, Adaugo vowed to become the one everyone in her family would look up to. I'm ready to do anything to make that happen, she said to herself. So, Adaugo started working very hard to achieve the lofty dream she had set for herself. She worked harder than boys of her age. She stopped doing regular girls' chores and took on the harder jobs meant for men. She also stopped mingling with the girls and started hanging out with boys of her age and sometimes the older ones. She'd go hunting, fishing, and farming with them. She even started taking part in male wrestling, and she was very good at it. One day, the king's only son, Chima, was stricken by an unknown sickness. The king and the medicine men did everything they could, but there was no cure for his sickness. With each passing day, Chima's sickness got worse. A very powerful native doctor was brought in from a faraway village to heal the king's son. The native doctor revealed that Chima's sickness wasn't ordinary, that it was sent from the spirit realm, and to cure the sickness, he needed the egg of an ugunzu, the hill bird. The hill bird was believed to be a conduit between the human and the spirit world. It was often used to appease the deities. But the only place the egg could be found was the top of a sacred mountain inside the evil forest, where no human had ever visited and came to tell the story. The king, desperate to heal his son, declared, "I will give to any man who will go up to the sacred mountain and bring the egg of an ugunzu to heal my son whatsoever he desires." Of course, no one was willing to take the king up on his offer, because the whole village knew no one had ever gotten to the mountain top and come back alive. It was a mission of no return. That evening, Adaugo, being Adaugo, told Auntie Ego, "Auntie, I used to think there were men with courage in this village. I never knew they were all cowards just like my father." Auntie Ego quickly cautioned her, "Adaugo, you cannot use such word for your father. No matter what, he's still your father. Moreover, my brother is not a coward. He's just being contented." Adaugo apologized to her, then told her, "Auntie, I have decided to go to the sacred mountain and bring the egg of the Ugunzu to heal the king's son." Her auntie looked at her in shock and said, "Ada, do you know what you are saying? No man has ever gone to the sacred mountain and come back alive. How much more you, a little girl?" "Auntie, I'm not a little girl anymore. Soon I'll be 21. I'm now a grown woman. Besides, no woman has ever attempted to climb the sacred mountain. It's possible the mountain may be friendly to a woman." Auntie Ego laughed profusely and said, "Now I know you are really a little girl. You think the mountain will be friendly to a woman? Please, my dear, go to your room and have a good night's rest. Maybe in your dream, you'll be able to get the egg to heal the king's son." Unknown to Auntie Ego, Adaugo wasn't joking when she said she was going to the sacred mountain to get the egg. Before dawn, she carried her bag and set out for the mountain. When Auntie Ego woke up, she called out her name severally, but there was no response. She went to her room and met the room empty. She searched everywhere for her, but there was no trace of Adaugo. "It's very much unlike Adaugo to leave the house this early without telling me where she was going," Auntie Ego said to herself. Panicking, she decided to go to her father's compound to see if she was there, but she wasn't there either. They searched everywhere for Adaugo to no avail. In the course of their search, they met Okorocha, one of the village hunters, who told them he saw Adaugo going into the forest when he was coming from his hunting expenditure that early morning. According to him, when he asked Adaugo what she was doing alone in the forest in the wee hour of the morning, Adaugo told him she was out hunting for antelope, that her friends were coming to join her soon. Instantly, Auntie Ego remembered their conversation the previous night about the sacred mountain. She told Adaugo's parents what she said about going to the sacred mountain to get the Ugunzu egg. Everyone was alarmed. Ijoma started rolling on the floor crying, "Chineke, my daughter Adaugo has killed me oh." Okafor too was deeply troubled. What was she thinking? Why is this my daughter like this? Adaugo, why do you want to kill me before my time? He said, looking distressed. Quickly, Okafor organized a search party to go search for his daughter. The search party, led by Okafor and his brothers, went straight into the forest, combing every nook and cranny of the forest, but they didn't find a trace of Adaugo. They kept on searching until it was almost dark. When they got to the road that led to the sacred mountain, they saw her footprints. "Ah, these are my Adaugo's footprints!" her father exclaimed, rushing towards the direction of the sacred mountain. His brothers and the other men quickly grabbed him. "Okafor, have you lost your mind?" his best friend Udoche queried. "You of all people should know no one goes beyond this point and come back alive. Do you want to get yourself killed?" he asked his friend. Okafor could not control himself. He cried profusely, knowing his daughter Adaugo had gone beyond the point of no return. There was nothing else the search party could do but to return home. When Ijoma saw her husband and the other men coming back from the forest without her daughter, she knew the obvious had happened. Adaugo had gone to the sacred mountain never to return. She stood speechless and motionless with hot tears dripping down her eyes. It was the tears of a grieving mother who may not see her only daughter ever again. Auntie Ego too joined in the crying. She blamed herself for not doing enough to talk Adaugo out of her plan to go to the sacred mountain. Meanwhile, on her way to the sacred mountain, Adaugo saw a crested porcupine caught by a trap. Without a thought, she set the struggling creature free from the trap and continued her journey. When she was close to the mountain, she saw a very beautiful pond with crystal clear water, the kind of water she had never seen nor heard of before. But at this point she was very thirsty, hungry and exhausted after walking for over 15 hours in the forest alone. Eagerly, she drew water from the pond to drink. But as she was about drinking the water, she remembered her mother's words. "Adaugo, my daughter, whenever something seems too good to be true, it is usually not true. You have to be wise." Immediately, she threw the water away and continued her journey. When she got to the mountain, it was already midnight, but surprisingly, everywhere was quite bright because of the full moon. Adaugo looked up but could only see a glimpse of the mountain stretching towards the sky. She thought to herself, "How can anyone climb this mountain? Maybe it was really a foolish idea to think I could do this." While she was still thinking, she heard someone groaning. She quickly turned and looked. It was an old woman struggling to carry a bunch of wood. Adaugo was scared because she didn't expect to see anyone there, an old woman for that matter, but her sympathy for the struggling old woman overshadowed her fear. She rushed to the old woman and said, "Mama, don't worry, let me help you carry the wood." The old woman was hesitant, but Adaugo prevailed on her. So, she helped her carry the wood. She walked behind the old woman until she got to her destination, a small cave at the foot of the mountain. After Adaugo set the wood down, she asked the old woman, "Mama, what are you doing here? I thought they say no one survives the sacred mountain." The old woman smiled and said, "My daughter, this is my home. Yes, it is true no one survives the mountain, but I have survived the mountain for so many years. But that is a story for another day." She gestured to Adaugo to take a seat, then she asked her, "What brought you here, my daughter?" Adaugo told her she came looking for an Ugunzu egg to heal King Odumegu's only son. On hearing the king's name, the old woman snapped, "Don't mention that name here ever again." Adaugo was perplexed, but she remained calm and apologized to the old woman. She continued, "Mama, how can I climb to the mountain's top to get the egg?" The old woman looked at her in surprise. "Climb to the mountain's top? No one has ever done that," she said, smiling. "But if it is the Ogunzu's egg you need, it's not on the mountain's top as you were wrongly told." "But Mama, if the egg is not on the mountain's top, where then do I find it?" she asked. The old woman told her, "Adaugo, my daughter, you ask too many questions. You just got here and it's the wee hour of the morning. You need to rest now. First thing in the morning, I'll take you there." Adaugo was excited by the old woman's assurance. "At least, I'd get what I came for," she said to herself. Then she suddenly realized she never told the old woman her name. At this point, she became confused and scared. Mama, how did you know my name?" she asked, fidgeting. "My dear, I know everyone's name, but you need to rest now. When it is done, we'll have time to talk about all that," she said, smiling. Adaugo could not sleep throughout that night. She had so many thoughts on her mind and many questions in her head. When it was daybreak, the old woman, as promised, took her to where the Ugunzu birds lay their eggs. Adaugo was surprised how easy it was to find the egg. Excitedly, she picked up one of the eggs, thanked the old woman, then asked, "Mama, how come nobody comes to the sacred mountain and return alive?" "Well, the reason those that have come before you never returned alive is because they failed to pass the tests," the old woman responded. "Tests? What tests are those?" Adaugo asked curiously. The old woman said to her, "There are 3 tests one must pass before he can come to the sacred mountain and return alive. You passed all 3 tests, that's why you are still alive." At this point, there was confusion clearly written all over Adaugo's face. The woman explained further. "The first test is the crested porcupine. Had you not saved the porcupine, that would have been the end for you. Most people lose their lives at that first stage. They either walked past the porcupine unbothered or kill it for food." The old woman continued, "The second test is the beautiful crystal clear pond you passed on your way. Because they'd be extremely thirsty as at the time they passed through the pond, they usually drank from the pond without permission. If you had drunk from the pond, you wouldn't have been standing here alive today." Adaugo then asked, "So, Mama, what is now the final test?" The old woman smiled and said, "I am the final test. The very few people that have managed to make it to the foot of the mountain either ran away in fear when they saw me struggling with my load or refused to help with the load. But you were different. You did not only help me with the load, but you carried it all the way to my cave. No one had ever done that before." Now, Adaugo understood the reason people come to the sacred mountain and never return. It isn't because the mountain is evil, but because most times, in the face of survival, humans are naturally selfish and lack empathy. The old woman told her that since she'd gotten what she came for, it was time she started heading back to save the king's son. But Adaugo asked about the pond, if she could drink from the water on her way back. The old woman answered, "Yes, you can drink of the water from the pond. However, the water is not ordinary water. It will open your eyes to start seeing things before they happen." Excitedly, Adaugo asked, "I'll start seeing things like what, Mama?" "You'll have to drink to find out for yourself, my dear." So Adaugo embarked on her journey back to the village with the Ugunzu egg neatly wrapped in her bag. On her way, She stopped by the beautiful pond and drank from the crystal clear water. Meanwhile, back in Umoke village, there was mourning in Okafor's household. It had been over 24 hours since Adaugo left for the sacred mountain. She was presumed dead because nobody had ever gone to the mountain and came back alive. Her mother, Ijoma, wept bitter for the loss of her only child. Her auntie, Ego, blamed herself for not doing enough to make Adaugo change her mind on going in search for the egg. While her father, Okafor, refused to eat or speak to anyone, he said to himself, "Had I not asked Adaugo to leave myself, she would still be alive today." Chima's health, on the other hand, was deteriorating with each passing day. The Council of Chiefs had no other choice but to ask the king to name his successor because they were scared that the death of Chima, the king's only son, would devastate the king. But the king, not ready to accept the fact that his son Chima was dying, refused to name a successor to his throne. 3 days after Adaugo drank the water from the pond, she woke up in the old woman's cave. She was shocked. "Mama, what am I still doing here? I should be in my village by now." The old woman said to her quietly, "My dear, after drinking the water from the pond, I found you lying unconscious by the pond, so I brought you here to tend to you until you woke." Adaugo told the old woman that during her state of unconsciousness, she had seen some very unusual visions but couldn't piece them together exactly. The old woman told her, "Now you know what I meant when I told you you'll start seeing things after drinking from the pond. Now, you have to stay back here for a few more days so I can help you harness the power of your vision." Adaugo was happy to stay back at the old woman's place to learn more about her newfound power. Now, it's been exactly 7 days since Adaugo left for the sacred mountain. Chima's health had become worse than before. So, the powerful native doctor told the king and the people that without the Ugunzu egg, it was just a matter of hours before Chima would give up the ghost. The whole village was in chaos as the only heir to the throne was lying on his deathbed waiting to breathe his last breath. They gathered at the palace waiting for the sad news of the king's son to be announced. While the king and the people of Umoke village were waiting, anticipating the passing of their prince, Adaugo, who was presumed to have been devoured by the sacred mountain, suddenly surfaced at the palace. There was pandemonium in the palace. Everyone stared at Adaugo as if they just saw a ghost. Without saying anything to anyone, Adaugo went straight to the native doctor to tell him she had the egg, but that she would only present the egg in the presence of the king. The native doctor took her to the king under the watchful eye of the whole village. "I have the Ugunzu egg, my king," Adaugo said, holding out the egg. The people were all surprised. How did a young girl like her get the sacred egg where no man could? One of the men in the crowd asked rhetorically. The king stared at Adaugo in awe, his face a blend of curiosity and excitement. The native doctor stood up and said to the king, "My king, now that the Ugunzu egg is here, I'll suggest we commence the rituals immediately to save the prince's life." The king beckoned on him to go ahead with the ritual, but Adaugo refused to release the egg. Instead, she reminded the king of his promise to reward whoever brought the Ugunzu egg. She told the king she had just one demand to make. While she was still speaking, one of the chiefs stood up. "My daughter, you have done well risking your life to save our prince. I appreciate your courage and the people of Umoke will ever remain grateful to you. However, it is our tradition that before any woman can make a request or demand of the king, she must be presented to the king by her husband if she's married or her father if she's unmarried," the man said. Another chief stood up to second what the first elder said. Maazi Azubike is right. That is the tradition, and it must be upheld at all times. I will advise you to give the egg to the dibia to commence the rituals while you hurriedly go home and bring your father to present you to the king so that you can make your demand properly before the king. All the chiefs supported him. So, the king asked Adaugo to hand the egg over to the native doctor and go bring her father to present her before him. Adaugo reluctantly gave the egg to the native doctor and hurried home to call her father. On her way home, she met her father, mother, auntie, and some of her siblings all running to the palace. They had heard the news of her return, so they were coming to see for themselves. When they returned to the palace, the rituals had already been performed, and Chima was already healing, much to everyone's amazement. As expected, Okafor presented his daughter Adaugo before the king to make her request. Adaugo told the king, "My king, I have but one request to present before you this day. My request is that, henceforth, any man who lacks the means to adequately care for more than one wife should not be permitted to marry more than one wife." All the men exchanged surprised glances, while the women, on the other hand, were delighted by Adaugo's request. "This is a rather strange request you have made. I will have to discuss it with the Council of Chiefs and then return with our decision." After consulting with the Council of Chiefs, the king declared, "I, and indeed the whole of Umoke, sincerely appreciate what you have done for my son. I do not take it for granted. However, my exact words were, I will give to any man who goes up to the sacred mountain and bring back the egg of an Ugunzu to heal my son whatsoever he desires." At that moment, Adaugo realized the king was up to something, but she listened intently to what he was going to say next. The king continued, "My daughter, I'm afraid I cannot grant your request, not because your request is out of place, but because the offer was made to any man who would go to the sacred mountain to get the egg, not any woman. You are a woman, so you are not qualified for the offer." The villagers murmured disappointedly amongst themselves. Adaugo was speechless. She didn't know what to say or do. She just stood there, motionless, as hot tears streamed down her face. What do you think happened next? Let's hear your opinion in the comment section. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share to your friends and loved ones. Bye.